It's the 18th. It's the 18th day. I don't know why that was. Of June 2024. Just a few problems with the stream that time. My apologies, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good. We're having a lot of problems for the last couple of days. After doing this for over a decade, we consider that unusual. Particularly since I got fiber optics, you just really wouldn't expect to see. And I got 2 viewers. It only took me a decade to get 2 viewers. I was pretty fortunate. That's what good work ethics will do, right? They'll get you 2 viewers during your live shows. Ignore those numbers, folks. Sure, I'm being censored clearly. I've been at this forever. Everybody in the nuclear industry, whether they like me or hate me, they know me. How can you not? I'm the only show on the friggin' planet. Which means I'm got the biggest target on my forehead and on my back, right? There's way too much propaganda out there for me to only have such a tiny audience, right? Westinghouse, which here in Canada was bought up by Brookfield and Camco, was it, I believe? And you see them putting a new warhead on a nuclear missile at something they can't even use, right? It's an awful tiny warhead, you ask me. It's hard to believe anything this industry tells you. How often do we cut them telling the truth? Maybe 4% of the time or something? Out of every 100 stories, it's 100% lies. Spent fuel cooling system briefly stops at Fukushima. You know, there was a worker died there at Unit 2, Reactor 2, a few days ago. And there was literally no media reported on it. It was just a couple of media that we never heard of before, of all medias to report on something like that. But for this story, it's everywhere. And which raises an interesting question. Is Fukushima using Reactor 6 fuel pool water pump as a misdirection after a recent death at Reactor 2? And it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? So Reactor 6, which is a really interesting story beyond Reactor 6. We're going to share that with you here in a second. There's a bunch of pictures released in 2021. 736, I believe it was. And I found it on the Chinese site, links to a TEPCO download. And so these were drone shots from very high altitude, very high quality though, from original footage in the first month or so. And in this particular case, there was a set of pictures, multiple set of pictures, and each one of them led you to something unusual. So this one led you over to Reactor 6. And if you look at Reactor 6, what you're looking at, it's completely pixelated out, right? It's completely pixelated. Just bear with me. So Reactor 6 is up right there. That's Reactor 6, but it's completely pixelated out. And there's very little information about Reactor 6. So Reactor 6, apparently today, they're saying the fuel pool pump has stopped. Bear with me. Well, if you're here and you're interested in nuclear, you got tons of patience. Because, this subject is not something you can just turn a few dials and flick a few switches and everything happens. This is a story where you got to be methodical about every facet of it. And you're not even allowed to have a Freudian slip when you're talking about these subjects. Or the nuclear industry will literally lose their minds. It'll be outrage for many, many directions. A spent nuclear fuel cooling system briefly came to an halt. Why would this make the news anyway? At the Fukushima #1 nuclear disease factory Tuesday due to a power outage. Well, if they had a power outage, then it wasn't just the pumps that were an issue, right? There was all kinds of other pressing issues on that site. It couldn't have been just that one pump on Reactor 6. Reactor 5 also got a fuel pulled, right? Allegedly. And this is why I'm wondering, are they using this as a distraction from a worker that died during alleged excavation looking for water quality, which is the most insane story conceivable. At number 2, there's clearly meltdowns at 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the 4 and the 8 fuel pools. So the last thing you're going to do there is excavate, because there's lethal doses everywhere under your feet. According to TEPCO, which was nationalized by the Japanese government, the number 6 reactor building's main power supply went off at 8:30 and the pump to send cooling water stopped. Well, it's not just sending cooling water, it's circulating the cooling water. The water has to circulate. It's not just water, it's special bore-rated water. And those reactors, they boil off about 120,000 liters, rather the fuel pools boil off about 120,000 liters each day. And so the fuel that's in the fuel pool is still splitting the same amount of atoms as would the boil water for each reactor core. There could be 8 reactor cores in the fuel pools. And each reactor core could power, say, 1 million homes and businesses. It does that by splitting atoms. When you take it out of the containment, the running reactor, and put it in a fuel pool with no containment, it's still splitting the same amount of atoms to boil water for 1 million homes. That is absorbed by the water. The water loses about 120,000 liters a day, which is an unbelievable amount of water, right? For a single day boiling off. So incredible energy. The energy is created by splitting atoms. And there's nothing on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against these anthropogenic man-made atoms. And so it'll take a few days, but then the water would expose the rods. The rods would immediately, the zirconium cladding would immediately catch fire. They'll burn at about 1800 degrees. And that'll ignite the plutonium uranium pellets inside of it. And they'll burn at 9,000 degrees. And that'll immediately evaporate all the water once that event is triggered. 2 minutes later, a fire alarm was activated. And smoke was seen. But no fire was confirmed by firefighters. Now, why would you send in firefighters into a nuclear event? Because they don't know nothing about it. Why would you send them in there? It's a very important question, actually. Firefighters don't know nothing about chain reactions, right? So they're the last ones you should be sending in. Every time there's a nuclear meltdown, you should immediately sacrifice 1 million nuclear scientists. And you just inject them with radiation, and some of them you let live for a few years, and you check the tumors. You kill them, then and check the tumors, and the rest of them you sacrifice them for science, right? I'm sorry, that's what they do with beagle dogs and beagle puppies, right? Suspensions of the pump pose no immediate problem. Some 1,300 spent fuel assemblies kept in a storage pool at the building because they are sufficiently cooled. 1,300 assemblies is 2.5 4 million pounds of plutonium uranium. Normally these reactors got around 3,800 assemblies in the two fuel pools, not 1,300. And so where did the assemblies go? Because this is what they do. They downplay the numbers till it doesn't, like now the numbers don't work with the statistics that we know. So 1,300 spent fuel assemblies are 1,800 pounds each. There's 100 fuel rods. Each rod is 18 pounds and 12 feet long. So it works out to 23.4, but 2.34 million pounds. But it's actually, we know it's around 3,850, 3,450 area. But because they don't have a repository, the pools are typically double that. So didn't he show you that picture? Which is the story of the worker who died at Reactor 2. They didn't show you a picture of Reactor 2 or the other reactors. But Reactor 6, they showed you a picture. Theoretically. And they even got one on the front page. Where am I to here? Just bear with me. A few little issues. I clicked instead of clacked. Let's do this again. Alright, here we go. No, not that one. Not that one. Not that one. That one there, I guess. So when I point, then I'm pointing in the right direction, right? But I screwed it up already, so don't worry about it. Let's do it this way until I figures out how much I screwed up. Suspend cooling halt for 10 hours at the wrecked, which is unusual then for them to acknowledge that it's wrecked, right? At the wrecked some days they're like that. Let me see if I can fix that. There we go, might work better. Emergency diesel generator did start up immediately after the circuit breaker tripped. So now they're saying a circuit breaker tripped. But it did not, or that's the diesel generator, but it didn't activate the pump. So when the power goes out, then the generators kick in, but they didn't operate the water pump. At the same time, the glitch, where you got to abandon part of your country if it breaks down, is a glitch, hit the reactor. Smoke plumed from the basement of the reactor's turbine buildings, causing a fire alarm to go off. Now, the turbine building was pixelated out in the pictures I showed you earlier, the original footage. There were 1,280 units. These are assemblies with 100 fuel rods in each assembly at 18 pounds each is 1,800 pounds per assembly. And 198 units of unspent fuel inside the pool as of Tuesday, according to TEPCO, which shouldn't exist. They are the worst. They kept them there so you can blame TEPCO for screw-ups instead of the nuclear industry, which is where you firmly should be blaming. But 198, say 200 units / assemblies of unspent fuel. You don't keep unspent fuel So, and there is no such thing as an unspent. The fuel is only used, about 3% of the fuel is used. It's got so many cracks, it's so fragile, you can't keep it in the reactor because it can melt down really easy, see? But the energy is, 97% of the energy is still there. But unused, which is what an unspent fuel is, an unused fuel rod is what they're actually talking about. You don't keep that actually in the fuel pools because it's not used yet. It hasn't gone through a chain reaction. It's not splitting atoms yet. The power panel glitch also temporarily halted the ventilation radiation monitoring system of a building used to incinerate waste material. Including cleared vegetation. Now, so why would you include that narrative, that connotation, cleared vegetation? Used to incinerate waste materials. Waste materials. This is a really strange way to frame this. An incinerator, a system of buildings. A system of buildings used to incinerate. This is / an incinerator. So why would you call it a system of buildings? I don't understand that either. Used to incinerate waste material. Well, I understand what they're doing. I'm just saying it's really interesting they would frame it that way, because including cleared vegetation. So why would you're at a nuclear meltdown, so why would you incinerate anything at that site? Because it's a nuclear meltdown site, right? So everything is going to be radioactive. There's nothing, and I mean there's nothing on that site that's not going to be radioactive. You got 4 nuclear meltdowns, maybe the spent fuel pool, and maybe reactor 6 too. But certainly 4 nuclear meltdowns and 8 fuel pools that have detonated. There's nothing on that site that's not irradiated every day, repeatedly. Cleared vegetation is obviously a misdirect too. And TEPCO is in the process of decommissioning the power plant after it was severely damaged. Severely damaged. Oh, that's cool. I thought they had nuclear meltdowns. That's quite the relief. They're only severely damaged. So look at the building. That's only severely damaged. This is how tall it should be. That's what it looks like over there. And they put a cover over, so it looks better than that now. But underneath the cover, it looks like that. And you can't fix these. You can't go there because it's lethal doses immediately. Same thing with reactor 3, right? There's no building left. Officially now, that never happened. The official story is they got all the fuel out of the pool top. They went up there on a building that doesn't exist. And even journalists went there and like, oh yeah, here we are, reactor 4 getting the fuel out of the pool.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4.
These
The whole of this building was...
maniacs, right? I'm going to spare you the pain tonight. Temporarily halted the ventilation radiation monitoring system of a building used to incinerate waste material. Temporarily halted the ventilation and radiation monitoring system of a building used to incinerate waste material. And then the editor was like, well, we're going to put cleared vegetation here because people are pretty stupid. If we don't put that there, they might figure something out. So the only thing you would incinerate at a nuclear meltdown is radioactive material. Don't worry though, they're grinding up the nuclear billions of pounds across the prefecture and shipping it to other prefectures and burning it in the community. It's important everybody share the pain and get sick and fucking die, right? cooling system halted at the wrecked Fukushima plant due to a power panel glitch. And so there's Fukushima, right? Wrong. That's not Fukushima. Fukushima doesn't look like this. Fukushima actually melted down. I don't know if I mentioned that. But if you listen to these people, you know nothing, right? So they ran out with the story, but they can't even find a picture. How can you not find a picture of Fukushima? How does that work? You're a journalist, right? We're talking about journalists. The pump responsible for circulating cooling water to cease operation at the number 6 reactor. And I showed you pictures earlier with the whole reactor 6. Not reactor 5 right alongside of it, but reactor 6 and the pump house and the stack, which vents radiation from the fuel pool 24 hours a day, were all pixelated out. Those pictures were released in the 10th year. And nobody knows why. And I'm the only person that I know that ever covered the pictures. And there was a media in Japan that I translated and found the links to TEPCO, but that media didn't show any of the pictures. They just linked you over to the pictures. Thank goodness. Additionally, the power panel issue led to a temporary halt in the ventilation and the radiation monitoring system of facility for incinerating waste material. So there's probably nothing happened at reactor 6. The big issue was that the incinerator probably incinerated some highly radioactive material and they had to evacuate the area. Is probably what really happened, right? Because this industry has no legacy of telling you the truth. It's existed for 80 years. In 80 years, if you took these people and waterboarded them 168 times like they did with Sheikh Mohammed, they still couldn't tell you the truth. They're incapable. They'll take it to their graves, right? To call them evil would be polite. That's a compliment for them. Including cleared vegetation. So all the media was very adamant. But see, why would you talk about a halt in ventilation radiation monitoring system, but talk about cleared vegetation in the same sentence? This is an industry of just degenerate morons. These are morons, right? Very dangerous ones, but they're obviously morons. If you can get incredible educations that they got, you can get a job somewhere else. You don't have to get a job being a degenerate moron. TEPCO is currently in the process of decommissioning. TEPCO? You mean the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants that don't speak the language, right? Hi, Dana. Dana couldn't find his chummy on his phone last night because he's a moderator, right? But I seen it after his comments, right? But that was there last night. I took screen captures of it. I don't know if it'll show up. Should have screwing with Dana's phone on him by the looks of it. I took screen captures of it last night. Oh, it must be in my other thing. Great pay in nuclear welding jobs. They are too. That's the scary part about that comment, James. They are great paying jobs, but they're not great jobs, are they? I bring up those screen captures of Dana last night because Dana didn't see the buttons for his monitoring, right? I actually took screen captures. Oh, there they are. I just wanted to show him that he was actually it was showing up as a moderator, but he wasn't seeing it on his end. So I don't know if they're trying to screw Dana over now. He doesn't have the little, there it is. He doesn't have the little dots used as a moderator. See that? But yet he's got the tool right on his nander, but he didn't see it on his phone. That's the first time he says that he's never seen that. That was very worrisome for me that they're doing that. Yeah, normally on a computer there are controls, 3 dots on his iPhone. Now there's none. And so we like having Dana as the moderator. He's so good at it, he never has to moderate. The trolls just fear him right away, right? Where am I to here? You're back on track. Just so Dana knows, anyway, that he actually did show up, but for some reason he wasn't seeing it on his cell phone. So there's a lot of strange stuff YouTube is doing to my like if I go to my video like a few hours ago, I went to my last show. And I've done this 3 times today, and I sat there. After 3 minutes, I'll get a thumbs up. And it was the same thing yesterday. And so today, I've done it 3 different times, and 3 times, after 3 minutes, I got a thumbs up. That's artificial intelligence, see? Trying to convince me that everything is normal on my site, when clearly it's not, right? You're welcome, Dana. I just didn't want you to worry, buddy. That's all. And Kevin was blocked. Really? Kevin's not blocked on my site that I know about. I seen Kevin there last night. I think his comments, some comments, but he's blocked. That doesn't surprise me. But he's definitely not blocked on this site. There's no way I'm going to block Kevin. My goodness. I'm just going through the comments to see if I can spot Kevin tonight by chance. Let's keep going here. I ran out of vinegar today. I'm sorry, piss and vinegar. You gotta watch out. Don't rub your eyes. It's a very bad habit. If you rub your eyes, you get oil in your eyes sometimes. Then it's worse. That's why it's important to use a face cloth to get the oil off your face once or twice a day. 'Cause then if you rub it, you get that oil in your eyes, right? TEPCO claims the nuclear contaminated wastewater is harmless to human health. Is not consistent with the facts, says expert. And I love these stories. These are meant to reinforce the fable that TEPCO didn't release any water till last year, August 24th to be specific. The plant's operators stated discharging the radioactive wastewater in August 2023. Opposition among local fishermen is backlash from the international community as they started discharging the radioactive water in August. Okay, so there's nothing got out until August. That's the consensus today, right? But when you look at the original pictures, you see it up there. I have no idea what's going on here. When you look at the original pictures, let me try this another way. That's not what I was looking for. Oh, I see what I got done. There you go. Let's do this. Well, we're getting there. I apologize. Sometimes I have, and we were a few minutes late getting started tonight, right? I had problems with, I had problem with my hard drive. I had I had to duck out of my session. I had to unplug my hard drives and plug them back in. And that's why I was a few minutes late. That was the only way I can resolve it. Because my sessions were empty. And my sessions are stacked with a couple of thousand of these things, right? And they were all blank. And I was like, okay, now what have I got done? There's not a day without struggle, unfortunately. I ran out of steam today. So I'm going to apologize to the 8 million species and everybody. I flatlined basically today. I never even put socks on today. And the bike is, the trailer and everything is still hooked up to the truck, right? I was supposed to get up and just drive off and start researching. And I couldn't do it. I wasn't even going to do a show tonight. I'm that tired. I'm that just worn out, frazzled, and everything else. And thank goodness, right, I came around enough. I started working on a show just a few hours ago. But I'm just no energy today. I'm feeling a bit better at night, but it's not that I was like sick or weak or anything like that whatsoever. I had 2 major naps today, for instance, for like an hour or whatever. But I couldn't do anything, and it's pretty rare, which is really cool for me not to be able to do anything. Now tomorrow is going to be a heat stroke day, so I'll be out in the woods tomorrow, whether I want to or not. I can stay home because I got air conditioning, but I'm not going to. And yesterday when we were out in the woods, what really bothered me was we got this, and I showed one of the videos from the Weather Channel last night too about it, where we had this front staying over us. This rain, it rains here constantly for the last 3 weeks. And this weird front is what they're calling it, stuck over us, right? And summer just starting because we're out in the Atlantic Ocean. And so the trails, normally, when you got all that water, not normally, but it's a given. When you got, the trails are full of potholes, right? They're the old train tracks, what I'm talking about. And they go right across the province. Unavailable, eh? Hello? 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 Yeah, it's Dana, yeah. Oh, hi, James. Oh, it showed up as an unknown number.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says an unknown number. Is that your normal phone? Yeah?
Yeah. I'm calling from my normal phone.
Wow. Holy shit, eh? And I almost hung up because I thought it was one of the trolls calling me, right? I just not in the mood for it tonight, right? But glad to hear from you, of course.
Right.
But yeah, it showed up as an unknown number. This is James Lucid for anybody who's not familiar. Go ahead, James. Hi, James. Let's try again.
Well, that's a real shocker. That's a real shocker. I'll send you a text later. No, I just wanted to call. I think I sent you a little small PayPal for fuel and everything, but I just want you to know, like, how amazing. How amazing you have been the past couple of days showing this footage out there. I can't get it out of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, something in there.
Well, it's the spider webs that really do it.
Yeah.
For me.
How is that even possible? How is it even possible not to have any spider webs, say? For folks who are not familiar, go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
Something here, like, if you do see a spider web, because you did catch one in frame, it's just a single strain.
And that was actually it too. It was a single strain. Yeah, strand rather. Sorry. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm familiar with, there was experiments done on spider webs back in the 60s. The CIA, they did drugs on spiders. Like, this is a spider on LSD. This is a spider web it made on LSD.
Right. Oh, yeah, good one. I remember that. Good one.
You know,
Yeah.
it made me think of that. Like, this is a spider on Fukushima.
Deformed, yeah. The ones we do see on houses, because we're not seeing them in the woods, but we are seeing on man-made structures, folks. And we think the reason is because the plants are sucking up radiation so they can't tie onto it no more. But tin cans and car tires and doors don't suck up radiation like plants, right? And so that's where we're seeing it. But they're all deformed, the ones we do manage to see. There's not many of them. And there's not much in the web itself. Go cut you off again, James. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
No, you didn't. No, but I wanted to also tell you that I bought this new, it's like a USB gamma spectrometer.
Oh, yeah,
It's
nice.
called a Radioactive 102 is the model I got. And it's really cool.
How do you radio code?
Radioactive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 102, yeah.
It's like $200 on Amazon.
Okay.
It's cheap. And it really wakes you up on like the world around you, because it's like a world first instrument for everyday people to get their hands across, apparently, right?
Yeah.
It's got an iPhone app, an Android app, shows you the spectrometry of like the isotopes picking up. But I tell you, the background's so high that, you know, it's all noise in the background.
Yes.
So it's like, you know, 30 counts per minute is to be the norm, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and
you're
and
getting-
that's for leftover weapons follow people that are wondering what he means by it. Go ahead, James.
So you're seeing 300 now. Being, you know, that's what I'm picking up, and I've been going around in places I go, I see it higher, but where I live, where I mainly stay, it's around 300. So I bought seaweed snacks, right, at the grocery store, and I'm like, I'm gonna test the seaweed snack, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't really buy. I just bought something that was like dry seaweed snack. So I get home, I start testing, and lo and behold, the background is stable. And I'm like, okay. So I take the wrapper off, and now I'm like, I've got the instrument on the seaweed snack itself. It's still normal.
It's
And
not.
I'm like,
It's not picking.
well,
Go ahead.
obviously they come from the Pacific, right? Like, I'm thinking in my mind, like, there's no way.
It's typically going to
like-
pick up gamma, right? That's most of these are.
Yeah, it's going to pick up gamma. So there could be other radiations I'm picking up, but I'm just looking at, other things I tested. Like, I tested a bag of potato chips, and it went up to like 800 counts per minute, 900. I threw it in the trash. But here I'm looking at the seaweed snack, and I'm like, I'm going to eat a seaweed snack. I'm just going to do it because I'm confident that it's not messed up, right? I ate the seaweed snack, Dana. It was the best thing I've had in so long. I tasted the sea, it felt like, that connection, that remembrance, and just how dangerous it can like
It's a shock
it,
to the system.
Right?
And you should be testing rain sprouts where they come out onto the ground.
Yeah.
Start testing those areas if you think about it.
But it was just the innocence of it. You can't eat seaweed. You just can't chance it. But, it's like you got to go as far as
Buying a
having
Geiger counter and checking it. I
I
know. I'm gonna. I got fishing rods, and I'm probably gonna take them with me the next time I go out on the water and catch a few trout. And if any of them dies, then I'm gonna bring them home with me, right? But I really miss like trout and stuff like that.
Oh, sure, I bet.
Yeah,
Honestly, because with your background as a fisherman, I mean, I can't imagine how devastating this is to your soul.
I won't touch it, the seafood.
Sure.
I won't touch it. No, because the bioaccumulation is insane.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a scary story about the potato chips. Holy shit! Oh my God, boy.
It's just a walk in the sunshine, right? A bag of potato chips.
And I got studies there on how potatoes suck up radiation, right? I show them every once in a while here when we're looking at the farms. One of those studies is on potatoes. they bioaccumulate radiation. I'm not sure which one off the top of my head. I'll probably find it in a
that's
minute.
probably what it had to been picking up. But, it was covered in sea salt too, so who knows, right? But the one thing I can't wait to see you do is sample the water under the microscope. I mean, you should be seeing
the next show.
Species that, it should be.
It should be massive.
It should be alive and well.
Yeah, it should be a massive amount in every drop. It should be like an overwhelming amount of creatures in every drop. And one of the things I'm wondering about is with all this rainfall. Like you got 3 weeks of rainfall. All the ponds right now are at their highest they've been in a long time, right? And the water is very dark. And so it's also going to be washing a whole bunch of mud into the rivers and that, all that rain, right? Because it washes down the mountains, ends up in the rivers, they end up in the ponds. And you can see the difference in the color of the water. Now it's really dark brown. And we used to experience that a lot on the west coast because of tropical rainforest. When you're diving on the coastline, you get all that fresh water after rainstorms and that, and made your visibility really bad. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it myself, and I just got to remember to put the bottles in the bike, and so when I finish with the phone with you, I'm going to play a little video. I'm going to run out and take a handful of bottles and put them in my backpack that I'm taking with me, so I don't forget to take it this time. Because I bring them in the truck and they're in a cooler, where they should be, but I keep forgetting to take them with me because I'm doing so much and. We're just starting, right? We're just getting the kinks out of everything. And the idea is to send the bottles out on the drones for people who are not familiar with what we're talking about. And we're going to collect water from ponds I can't access and other people can't. So we get the best water imaginable to get. And then fly that back to me, put the cap on it, and come home. And live on the show, we're going to take water droplets because they have the little glass vacuums for sucking up the water. They're disposable. So everything is very sterile, everything is very clean, everything is untouched, and we're going to be able to show that live in real time. Hopefully tomorrow night. That's the plan for tomorrow night, is to start doing that.
That sounds wonderful. But let me just let go. I'll get off the phone, but I just want to hear from you what that experience was like when you're on the trail and you're saying, there should be bugs all over the place. I should be swallowing mosquitoes and everything.
Yes, exactly.
There's nothing here. I just want to hear that. I'll take that offline, but I love you so much, Dan. Thank you so much.
Love you too, buddy. Thank you, my friend. Right. Good stuff. Keep us updated on the Geiger counter, eh? Says James Luce. James, keep us updated on the Geiger counter. And I'm just going to play a little clip. This clip here. I'm going to go ahead and put some sample bottles in my backpack that I travel with. And then I got no more excuses, right? Not excuses, but I actually got the bottles with me, and I'll do what I'm saying I'm doing. So I'll be right back in a sec. And this clip is the apologist. You're seeing, they're going to tell you how they control the radiation in your hospitals, communities, and who these people are. And all of these people, you're looking at them there, we've already flushed out. These are very terrible people. I'll be right back. Here, let's play this.
When I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this, or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented. The ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and IRPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. IRPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own U.S. NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known, it's been operating nearly 100 years, not quite. Main commission, 10 people. It's got 5 standing committees. So it's 100-ish folks. I lead one of the 5 committees. If you look at the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation that looked at the effects from Chernobyl, from Fukushima, from other areas, and that has about 30, roughly, countries that are represented in that group. If you start teasing through these pictures, you're going to see the same people on every one of those organizations. So the same people from ICRP are on UNSCEAR, they're in IRPA. If you look at the NCRP, again, the U.S. organization that advises the country on radiation protection issues, it's 100 people, a lot of gray-haired 100 people. And most of them are part of UNSCEAR, are part of IRPA, are part of ICRP, participate in IAEA. So the result, or the real world, is that there's not that many folks that really do radiation safety, radionuclide transport, dose calculations, all of this in the world. It's a pretty small club. And we wear 20 hats. Today I put on 3 pins, and I could put on a whole bunch more, but Health Physics Society, ICRP, Certified Health Physicist, I've got NCRP on there, I've done IAEA, and so the point is, we're a small group, you should cherish us. So,
yeah. These are she's Kathleen Higley. That's Miles O'Brien there with the white shirt and tie on the one-armed bandit. That's the apologist from TEPCO. This is Kyle Vetter from Berkeley. The girl in the white is the former Nuclear Regulatory Commissioner. And the guy who's sitting there at the very behind Kathleen Higley by the flag, and look, they even got a Japanese flag there, and they got the American flag. This is the press club in Washington. These are 2 of the sample bottles, the blue ones, and then the orange ones, right? So I just put 2 big fistfuls of the orange one and a fistful of the blue ones in my backpack that time. And the backpack has my binoculars, the camera, the drone, and other stuff into it. And so there's no way I'm going to be on the trail without that, right? That rides on the back seat, right? If I'm on the quad, it rides on the back seat with me, right? Started discharging, and that's quite scary, 800 counts per minute in a bag of potato chips. And because your Geiger counter is only picking up a fraction, potato chips are a nightmare. Started discharging radioactive water in August 2023. Let's go back to that story. Well, first off, we're talking about on the trail, and they're full of water, and the water should be this herd of insects over every puddle of water. And you should have to duck your head because it's so scary looking. And because if you're not paying attention, you're going to be spitting out mosquitoes or little small flies, right? And then at the same time, you would see a whole lot of horse flies because they're going to be feasting on them, right? And at the same time as that, you're going to see insect-eating birds too will be hanging out in that area, and they'll be back and forth eating those insects too. That's those water puddles are a nursery for insects, right? Particularly the mosquitoes, and 3 or 4 years ago, every water puddle would be just a disaster. You would just load going through it because you got to have all these insects, this plume of insects hovering above it. And there's nothing. And at the same time, of course, there'll be spider webs on both sides of the trails because it's a very woody trail, right? And there's no spider webs. There should be 500,000, 480,000 or something per acre. And so normally you can check the the spider web for the local population of insects, right? Because there's a lot of microclimates out there. You would find different insects sometimes in different areas. And we're not seeing them. But we are seeing them on buildings and houses and automobiles. But they're always deformed and always spindly. A lot of these little single strands. Because a lot of spiders will eat their webs and take them with them when they're moving, right? But, it's hard to be out in the forest and not have a productive web. So the spiders typically you'll find, and you can't miss it. They stand out, especially at the sunlight. That's why I like being out there when the sun is shining. And you also, if you find them on the shorelines, so some fish will actually take them right out of the ear. And we're not seeing it out there at all. And we're not seeing most of the birds you're seeing are seed eaters, not insect eaters. Because there's no insects. So here they are. The time the plant started discharging the radioactive wastewater in August of 2023. And so this media comes out and says TEPCO's claim, this is China now, mind you, TEPCO's claim that nuclear contaminated wastewater harmless to the human health, not consistent with the facts. And then you got the expert, right? But when you actually look at what they're talking about, neighboring countries have every reason to be concerned about the food safety. And what TEPCO said is not consistent with the facts, says a professor. So how can a professor at the Ryukoku University, however you pronounce it, not know the reactors are actually gone in the first week? How can a professor not know that? And then how can a professor say that the only thing that's got out of this is tritium? Do you get how the law actually works? And something in the water. I just removed 2 of your comments. Kevin Blanche is not blocked on this site. Dana didn't block him, so Dana's not the only person that could fix it. I don't know why you would make a comment like that. Because I was talking to Dana Nassan, I clearly stated that he's not blocked. And so if I got to remove another one of your comments, I'm going to remove you. Because I don't trust anybody to do when he say stuff like that. I lose all respect for him right away. What TEPCO said is not consistent with the facts. A professor at the Ryukoku University. Japanese people rallied against the top court's ruling, this just came out a couple of days ago, about Fukushima nuclear accident. And so the Japanese top court said the government is not responsible for the victims. But yet, because the Price-Anderson Act worldwide, the taxpayers are the people that are paying for it. So the government is responsible because the taxpayers are paying for all this. TEPCO went bankrupt and was nationalized right away, which means the government superseded everybody. So they're responsible, right? That's clearly what's happening here. And so hundreds of people rallied outside a Japanese government Supreme Court on Monday to protest against the top court's ruling that the Japanese government is not liable for the 2011 Fukushima nuclear accident. And the protesters chanted slogans and held placards reading, "Return my livelihood, return my home." Well, you can't return your livelihood, you can't go back to the nuclear wasteland, and you can't go back to your home, it's a nuclear wasteland. And so after 13 years, these people still can't rationalize why they had to leave. Because of the disinformation constantly provided by the nuclear industry. Right, they're disconnected from the reality, like that professor who said that the tritium was only started to release last year. This was clearly meant as propaganda. It has nothing to do with the facts. The buildings were destroyed in the first week. The radiation is unmitigated. It can't be contained. So to suggest that only tritium was released and it only started last year is a vicious, despicable, sadistic, maniacal lie. They ranged from survivors of the Fukushima nuclear disaster to the plaintiffs' lawyers, university professors, and ordinary residents, with many in their 70s and 80s. In fact, some protesters said because of the high radiation risk, they were forced to move home a dozen times. Not only their life was totally upended, but they suffered serious psychological trauma. And so why would you mention the word psychological? Radiation has incredible illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. And so why would you go down that road of psychological? Because radiation fallout is not psychological. There is obviously some psychological adverse effects because you can't go back to your home. You don't know if you were poisoned. You might have left your pets behind. You might have starved to death or died of thirst or something like that. Or you might have loved ones who dropped dead of heart attacks because of Fukushima. But there's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. There's many mental health issues, absolutely. But psychologically, whenever we hear that particular connotation, that's usually the apologist that will go down that route. It's like a radiophobia, right? Or something like that. This is what we'll hear from the pro-nuclear apologist. And there's a million of them, a nickel. For every nickel, you can buy a million apologists, right? The ruling that the Japanese government is not liable is a contempt for the pain. It's not felt by the victims as the protesters. Again, 6 in 10 children with diabetes. Let me show you some of the actual issues. It's not psychological. This industry is such an evil industry. And the people in it are such sadistic propaganda machines. Let me see if I can, another way to look. Here we go. So this is a study, congenital heart disease operation. So they done a study on, they were trying to, congenital heart disease operations rose 14% after Fukushima. So per 100,000 live births. So 14% is an awful lot of open heart surgeries, right? Per 100,000 live births, right? Per 100,000, which meant it's 14.2%, so it's 14,200 children, neonate infants, need open heart surgery. right, 200,000, or out of every 100,000, there's 14,200 children need open heart surgery to correct congenital malformations that'll show up. So for them to come out and use psychological, the media, to even throw that out, when like 6 in 10 Fukushima children with diabetes, for instance. There's 13,646 out of 38,000 children with tumors 2 centimeters or bigger, and the thyroid gland is only 3 by 5 centimeters. These are huge tumors. It also means the thyroid is producing hideous, copious amounts of radioactive hormones. There's studies that more children being born with one testicle, for instance. Like it's an absurd amount of children being born with one or none, no testicles. And there's a whole list of these actual harmful effects that, not harmful, but life devastating. You know, there's 13,646 out of 30, that was thyroid tumors. So there's, what was it in heart attacks? Let me look up that one for you. I can't remember. Believe it or not, I can't remember that statistic. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I can't remember that statistic. Can anybody remember it before I find it? You haven't got much time. It's almost there. Here we go. It's going to show up any second. It's like 12,000, 13,000 or something. Extreme increased mortality caused by cardiac diseases. And yeah, so 12,700 extra people in a single month died of heart attacks. That's not the only thing. You can see cancers. They're not talking about like for cancers in the first year, it was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. 865,000. And not everybody got health care. Not everybody's diagnosed. For instance, right? And it's not just cancer, because your immune system is compromised, right? Let's keep going here. It's not felt by the victim. What I'm showing you is actual documented facts. There's no conjectures, there's no opinions, it's just facts. And so the media likes to take these kinds of things and then use them as a propaganda masterpiece, right? Hit by an earthquake and an ensuing tsunami. I don't care how the nuclear accident happened, it happened. So first and foremost, let's acknowledge there's actually going to be victims that released radiation. And so there's no prominence given to the accident. Released core meltdowns and released radiation. Have a nice fucking day, right? I mean, this is not very hard to articulate the significance of what happened. It actually blanketed the entire country and the planet in radioactive fallout. This is not isolated, and if I got access to it, then they have access to it too, right? So the Neptunium-239 dispersal, that model over there is 20 days of radioactive fallout. So when the media comes out and says released radiation, this is the kind of prominence that I'm talking about that absolutely should be included. You know, the French study is a study of a million times what they consider normal, but was 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. And what that means is, you know, because cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second for hundreds and hundreds of years, but it can't just be cesium. Now that model is only based on 9 days. And I can show you a model based on a bit longer than that from these people, right? An updated version of that model. And a study of it, the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs that showed up. This one is of the cesium-137. And this model is based on 16 days or something of radioactive fallout. But that study over there is based on sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs sequestering in the testicles and of the males. But does that mean the females didn't ingest it or breathe it or consume it or absorb it or you know what I'm saying, right? And so what you're talking about is sterilizing the males. And then you have these plume models based on 15 days after the tsunami, 10 days after the last reactor detonated for the first times. They detonated again to fall some up in the following week, right? Just these two on their own is a real problem. This is not a game, okay? This is why we're not seeing any insects in the forest. Now, I've done the research from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And we're on the East Coast doing research. And, you know, along the way, I can show you the ridiculous amount of documented stories of emaciated animals because of the broken food chain. Every bird we're seeing is starving to death. Severely emaciated babies. All of them are starving. There's carts filled with emaciated dead bodies for seals and sea lion babies. And animals sick, starving, emaciated. Sardines and crayfish disappeared. They vanished. Marine mammals are starving. And most of these are based upon, not all of them by no means, but a lot of them are based upon research. We were on the ocean doing the research, reporting on it for 6 years, for 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean when they were coming home. Experts like walking skeletons, extremely emaciated. Very sick and emaciated. Seals and sea lions are starving to death. Very poor conditions, badly emaciated. Acute hemorrhaging in owls along the west coast began 8 months after Fukushima. I mean, these are extinction threat for salmon, sardines, squid, sea urchins, kelp. Massive sea star deaths, marine mammal strandings. The die-off of the birds, unprecedented in size, scope, and duration. Many different species. You've got the common thick-billed murres. There was over 1.4 million of them found. They dive 600 feet all day long. And they feed on squid and sardines and krill and anchovies and, you know, small 5, 6, 7, 8-inch fish. And they dive 600 feet all day, and they couldn't find nothing. And the coastlines are naked. There's nothing for them to feed on the coastlines. I'll show you that in a second. Black-legged kittiwakes, horned and tufted puffins, gulls, and sooty short-tailed shearwaters. And at the same time, it's concurrent with whales and seals and sea lions and sea otters and fish mortality events, facing the possibility of an extinction. So we launched research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, and we continue to do that for many years. For many, many years. And what we found was quite disturbing. We've done this for year after year after year. Was the species to your left are actually exterminated. Right? They're gone. They're not coming back. And we done the whole coastline year after year. These species are wiped out. I'll show you the before and after pictures again. So there's around 7,000 highly visible species. 7,000 highly visible species exterminated. Does that matter? So look at the species to your left. Just give me a second here. The species to your left are exterminated. They're exterminated. They're gone. Let me see what I got done here. Just bear with me. Almost ready. I have a list here because I have the keys to my site, right? So I have a list of everybody that's blocked on this site. Right? I just scrolled through the list, and I don't see Kevin Blanche in that list. And there's no reason Kevin Blanche would be blocked. Why would I block Kevin for? And Kevin wasn't blocked last night. There's one more boo. Nope. And there's not that many people blocked on this site, right? Anyway, so look, the species to your left are exterminated. They're exterminated. And the pictures to the right is where we done the research expeditions. Now we done it because first off, you get the media telling
What
you
I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We know the radiation is real because we have endless headlines. We have endless studies showing the radioactive fallout in amounts that are stunning, that are unprecedented, the numbers we've never heard tell of before, numbers we haven't even conceived of before. And that I dove that whole coastline as a commercial diver when I was young, and I'm very familiar with those species. And so I went back and researched it for 6 years to see if the species would recover. Once we'd done the first year and the species were exterminated, now we have to go back year after year to see if the species return, because typically the ocean is a soup of life. But in this case, it's not. So those species are now, and look at these pictures without the comparison side by sides. That's pretty amazing, right? That's your typical beach in British Columbia, Canada, pre-Fukushima. And then post-Fukushima, of course, and you can see the zodiac, I went everywhere. These are, it's hard to comprehend if you don't know me very well, if you haven't been around very long, but very methodical. I'm very thoughtful in everything that I do. And there's a reason for that. It's because it takes so much resources, so much planning, so much energy to do the smallest things for research that I can't afford to make a mistake, right? It's just too expensive, and it's very difficult to fund anything. And so we're doing the research, and that's all that matters. But it's it's not on the scope of a typical institution that has enormous amounts of money and people, right? And usually the majority of them are meant to cover up, not to actually tell the truth. So I've learned to be very methodical, particularly when it comes to the research. And because why put in all this effort and not do the job properly, right? But I do it better than they would do it because I care. It's not a game to me. I'm there for all the right reasons. So are you. You're here for the right reasons because you know bloody well that I'm 100% honest 100% of the times and that I'm accountable. But also I'm not going to play any games. Let's keep going here. All right, let's get back on track here. So the Supreme Court of Japan again voted down compensation. They compensated all of their friends, but they're not going to compensate the other people. Around 470,000 people in Fukushima and surrounding areas were forced to evacuate. And that's the legitimate numbers, right? Around 470,000 people in Fukushima were forced to evacuate. And so what's the number that they give out, say 5 years ago, was about 110,000. And then it was 80,000 the next year. And then it was 60,000 the following year. Right? They got rid of the story, and they done that in every facet of this story too, right? They've been doing that same routine. So this story showed up on the same day, a couple of days ago, as the story about a worker who died at Fukushima. And Yahoo, I would never use Yahoo after what I've seen in the last month. They're up to no good, these people. Japan's Fukushima worker died in a mudslide. Worker at Japan's meltdown hit nuclear plant dies in mudslide in first accident casualty. That's 2014. In the first accident casualty. But they go on to say that the worker was the seventh to die over the last 3 years, and the other three died from heart attacks. One for leukemia, but none of that deaths has been related to radiation exposures. So wait a second, 3 workers, now it's 4, died of heart attacks on the site, but it's not related to radiation. Really? White House proclaims new era of nuclear weapons without numerical constraints. So NATO Secretary-General Stoltenberg, Jens Stoltenberg, he's Finland, is he? Made it clear that expanding the number of deployed nuclear weapons in response to Russia and China was a central subject of discussion at last week's NATO defense. NATO was created during the Soviet Union debacle, right? And they were, a bunch of countries got together. If you look it up now, it says 30 countries. So if you look up NATO, it'll say, not 30 countries, I'm sorry, it'll say, you'll see, when you look it up, you put in NATO, and then you'll see the search, and it'll say 30 militaries. So what's going to happen if you put 30 street gangs together under one power structure? It's going to be pretty evil, right? What's the difference? This street gang called NATO got nuclear weapons, for goodness sakes, jet fighters, aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and there's no one to hold them accountable. You didn't have a referendum to join NATO, did you? You don't have a say in what NATO does or your country does for NATO, do you? Right? They've taken over your resources. And 99% of the people out there are completely asleep. They shouldn't exist. And then, so NATO Secretary-General, like giving them these grandiose, all this power and everything else. A U.S. soldier mounts a refurbished nuclear warhead, on top of a Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile. You can't use it. It's literally the stupidest picture imaginable. You can't use the weapon. Why are you doing it? Because it's big money. There's no other reason. There's nothing sensible to do it for. Yeah. Here we go. Don't worry about it. NATO and defense alliance, and since he's uttered these magic words, NATO is a defensive alliance. NATO was supposed to be dissolved when the Soviet Union dissolved, along with everybody's pensions and patents. Millions more are given to build tiny nuclear reactors in Wyoming. Millions more given to build tiny nuclear reactors in Wyoming. Hang on here. And this is Bill Gates' new reactor called a boiling water XT advanced nuclear reactor. It doesn't exist. They're not actually making the reactors. Right? They actually don't exist. They don't have an application into the regulatory agencies. They don't exist. Let me see what I got going on here. Just bear with me. Well, this is the show last night. I'm going to bring up the video from last night. There's Kevin Blanch's name right there. Look. Kevin Blanch. That's the video from last night. I streamed 1 day ago. Kevin is not blocked. Please stop saying Kevin is blocked or you're going to find yourself blocked. Kevin is not blocked. There he is. Any questions? He's not blocked. Stop saying he's blocked. I can't get work done when people are telling stories that are not true. And I have to wonder, why would you say that when it's not true? And so generally, when I suspect somebody of interfering, I'll just block them and get rid of them. I don't have fucking times for games. I don't have any patience for games. Zero patience whatsoever. Zilch patience. When I know that I didn't block somebody. Because then it sounds like they're trying to start a fight, right? They're trying to start, oh, Dana got you blocked or something like that to Kevin Blanche. Just create this fucking divide, right? And so there's no substance to say that Kevin is blocked. And so, guess who's about to get blocked on this site? Have a nice fucking day. Light enough to be transported by rail, ship, or truck. And then it gets even worse, right, don't it? I got no patience for this fucking stuff. I got zero patience, right? I have too much fucking work to do when people play games with me. Don't say stuff that's not true. And there's no issue. Light enough to be transported by rail, ship, or truck. Again, right? They're talking about something that doesn't exist. And these small modular reactors are going to run on mixed oxide fuel. They're going to run on high assay mixed oxide, plutonium mixed oxide fuel, and just to make out some power. And at the amount of power that you're going to get out of these, so generated about 50 megawatts of nuclear power, enough to light up about 9,000 homes. 50 megawatts. But typically a megawatt is close to 1,000 homes, not 200 homes, right? Which is what they're talking about. So a megawatt is equivalent to 1,000 kilowatts. On average, it range from 400 to 1,000 homes per year worth of electricity. So 50 megawatts, lighting up 900 homes, works out to 180 homes for these small modular reactors. So they're not energy efficient at all, not even a little tiny bit. In fact, they're the opposite of energy efficiency. They're not even 1/5 energy efficient of a typical megawatt energy. An announcement comes on the heels of the billionaire Bill Gates making a historic visit. A historic visit. How the fuck is somebody visiting Wyoming a historic visit? Like, what are you talking about? Because Bill Gates is going to visit the area, that's an historic visit? Do you got any idea how, and who wrote that? This guy here wrote that, and he's calling Bill Gates going there a historic visit, as if that's got something to fucking do with like, why would we a historic visit? Why? Because he's a billionaire. That's an historic. Because he's a billionaire, we got to worship the ground that he walks on. What's next? We got to make fucking burgers out of his shit too. Bill Gates is making a historic visit. Like, someone should make a visit to you, and like a psychiatrist, and find out why you're such a moron, Pat. The announcement comes on the heels of a billionaire Bill Gates making a historic visit. Like, I'm reading that and I can't wrap my mind around that particular connotation. I can't fucking wrap my mind around that. India to buy Russia's floating nuclear plant. Oh, which is supposed to be the small modular reactor. Let's talk about that one. That's fun. How many stories is this fucking thing? So you got 2 stories here. Like, the whole reactor, by the way, is underwater. So it's probably 8 stories deep, right? But it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, say 14, 15, 16 maybe. But let's say 12 stories tall, 120 feet tall. It's 500 feet long, right? It's 300 feet wide. You're going to put that on the back of a transport truck or something? And it's probably 6, 7 stories below ground, below the water. The entire reactor, which is quite big, is not as small. This is only a fraction of it. All of that is underwater. And they've been out there since, now this was jimmied together from an old barge. And they were using second-hand parts to build this disgusting thing. They got to change the fuel every 2 years. Not only that, how much is going into the ocean? Because you can't contain everything on this little barge. And it's got a fuel pool on it. Where do you think all that is being emitted to? And so people are actually out there, and we've covered probably 40 or 50 stories on that, where they call that a small modular reactor. First off, you can't connect these barges to each other. There's nothing small about it. It's gigantic. And who knows how big it is underwater. It's massive underwater to accommodate these massive reactor that has got there, right? And so it's supposed to power 100,000 homes, is 70 megawatts. And because it's a big reactor, not a small modular reactor, then its scale is actually 1,400 people. Because, you know, there's more than one person living in a home, right? So it's around 1,400 people per megawatt. Which is quite different than the 900, right? 9,000 when you scale it up in people, right? And so Russia's thinking about selling this old wreck that was built with scrap, that was originally meant to be scrapped itself. And he said, well, this is really big. Let's build a reactor on it. And so India is all, this is all underwater, what we're looking at here. Of this stupid reactor. Taiwan's last nuclear plant prepares to retire its first reactor. Taiwan, of course, massive earthquakes there this year, right? Where buildings are tipped over on severe degrees, like 6, 7, 8-story buildings have tipped over, where the country is just shocking at the damage we've seen there. It's the very last place you would expect to find nuclear. It really is. And it's a perfect place for geothermal, and it's a perfect place for wind, because it got the high ranges. You can put your windmills up high, and you got 24-hour wind every day of the year, basically. A day after billionaire Bill Gates says he's willing to invest, and big technology company Microsoft and Google are eager to see more nuclear energy feeding their power-hungry data centers, but are far less willing to provide the capital needed to pay for a growing interest in reactors. But they're happy to censor me, happy to censor you. The companies that need the energy told attendees at the American Nuclear Society's annual conference that they're poorly positioned to help develop new reactors. Building reactors, especially using new technologies, comes at a high cost, high risk, according to Coburg, who's the head of the energy market innovation at Alphabet, which is Google and YouTube, right? Their parent company is called Alphabet, which is despicable, isn't it? because they're the last one you want teaching your kids the alphabet, is Google. Google's so evil, it doesn't even understand what being good would look like. It has no concept. Clean energy. How can you call nuclear clean energy? It's the most resource-intensive energy on the planet. It needs dedicated gas and oil or coal plants, 2 of them, dedicated to the nuclear disease factories to keep them running. They can't run on their own energies. They're advocating for nuclear power, which means they need to censor people like me and you. TerraPower expects to complete the reactor in 2030. So in 6 years, Bill Gates is going to have one of his small modular. He doesn't even have an application into the regulatory agency, for goodness sakes. Which the whole application is 1 million pieces of paper. It's going to take 4 or 5 years for them to go through that much of the design, find any flaws, give it back to the engineers, get it reconfigured, and then there's going to be another 3 or 4 years of back and forth like that. Then once they get the applications approved, then they get a license application in. When that's approved, you're talking 7, 8, 9 years down the road. On top of that, now they got to build a test reactor somewhere and run it at low power for a couple of years, and then ramp up the power to see if they can find any significant flaws, because a single accident would be catastrophic for the whole industry. So they're going to put it through all of these checks and balances, so to speak, right? You're 20, 30 years down the road. So how the fuck is TerraPower, Bill Gates, going to have a reactor completed by 2030 when they don't even have an application into the regulatory agency for the NATO reactors, for their idiot, moron, stupid small modular reactor? Huh? And when? So when can we expect that? La 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 la. Bear with me. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. My apologies. Oh, that's great. Hang on. Old trouble in me. So, India's nuclear stockpile tops Pakistan's for the first time in 25 years. You got 172 nuclear weapons in India now. Why does India need more nuclear weapons? They had 164 last year. They had 164 last year. Yeah, bear with me. Anyway, we're almost here. Bear with me, we're still trying here. A few technical difficulties I'm about to be finished with. There's not much I can do. I just get through this. Here we go. I think I'm there. Oh, for God's sakes. Hang on. my goodness. It's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? My apologies to everybody. And we're almost finished. Uranium-bearing material from Japan has reached Utah. Is it radioactive waste or fuel for clean energy? No, it's radioactive waste. And what's even worse about this story, the uranium will be extracted from the material at the White Mesa Mill, which is a despicable... Look at the tailing ponds. All those chemicals are evaporated into the ecosystem because it's too expensive for them to store it, see? So they just screw you and the ecosystem. The 138 tons of uranium-bearing material, 138 tons of nuclear waste from Japan. And the industry says it's fuel source, but it's nuclear waste. Everybody knows what it is. Calling it clean and going to make clean energy out of it is insane. Uranium-bearing ores, resin, sand, and carbon that remains after uranium extraction testing at the two Japanese Atomic Energy Agency facilities in Honshu, Japan, which is that one of the Manchu reactors? Mandu or Manchu reactors? The sodium reactor they're talking about, I wonder? After the company culls the uranium from the material, they store the waste on-site in containment pools. They store the waste in pools. You can't store waste in pools because they evaporate. In other words, you're going to contaminate the ecosystem with materials. Because that's what it means, right? Containment ponds. You can't contain it, it's in a pond. How are you going to stop that from evaporating out? How does that actually work? Anybody want to explain that neat trick? Yes, it threatens the local water supply, the air qualities, and public health because there's no containment. To call it a containment pond is completely dishonest. It's 100% dishonest. So it was shipped by ocean to Washington. Then the material was trucked 1,000 miles to White Mesa Mill. He said, we recover uranium, a valuable clean energy resource. There's nothing clean about it. Particularly that process that they're doing. There's nothing clean about that either. From various materials, which most people would think is a good thing unless you're an anti-nuclear activist. Unless you're an anti-nuclear, and you have to be an activist to oppose what they're doing. You have to be an activist. The Energy Fuel spokesperson wrote in an email. Isn't that something? Isn't that an incredible statement? Unless you're an anti-nuclear activist. Unless you're an honest, really, really good person. That's what he's really. And so he despises you because you're a good person. He has no idea what it's like to be that. What a disgusting person to say something like that. Is Nova Scotia next for the nuclear power experiments? You know it is. Yep, Nova Scotia. So what they done was there was two British mixed oxide fuel companies showed up here in Canada. The Canadian government gave them $5 million each. They started up a subsidy company, and they put $10 million in it. And then that company, which was separate from the government, gave the two nuclear companies $5 million each so they can have an office and a building. And it's a lot of money to give away for no commitment, right? And then that company dissolved. So the entire function was to give the two nuclear companies $5 million each so they can be in Canada and cost them nothing to set up shop. And they want to take the fuel assemblies from the CANDU reactors and make plutonium mixed oxide fuel out of it, which is illegal, by the way, under the Bill of Rights here in Canada. But these two companies shows up, the government gives them the money, what's the chance that they're going to be allowed to do that too? It's very realistic, right? Nova Scotia, beware. Of April the 5th, we have been stripped of legal protection from the expensive and dangerous nuclear power experiments, a protection we had for over 30 years. 2 small clauses removed from the prohibitions of the nuclear power plants in Nova Scotia are buried in the Extensive Energy Reform Act, which makes major changes to utility regulations, power systems operations, and power generation. So they slipped in the bill a passage that allowed all of a sudden now, without no debate, with no referendum, allows Nova Scotia to have the nuclear power plants. Dirty, 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 disgusting. I mean, that is disgusting, isn't it? That really is disgusting, though. Just hang on a second. Apparently, the PC government is ready in Nova Scotia for small modular reactors. Medium or modular nuclear reactors to Nova Scotia Power as the debate begins. Well, there is no debate, right? There's no referendum. There's no public debate. And so they're hoodwinking the Canadians by slipping in an amendment without the consensus of the country or the population. So also Camco's Saskatchewan Power Westinghouse to explore nuclear tech for clean electricity. But this is Canadian Mining Journal, and nuclear is not clean. There's no facet of nuclear that's clean. Westinghouse is actually bankrupt here in North America. And look, and so this is an artist's rendition of what a Westinghouse reactor will look like. And look in the background, what do you see? Farmlands. But this is only a rendition, right? This is not an actual reactor. It doesn't exist. That's the artist's version of what the reactor will look like. And they got farms on both ends of the picture. Isn't this something though? Bear with me while I get my act together here. Yeah, I got no idea what's going on. Yeah, Westinghouse is 49% by Camco, which is typically, well, they're a fuel processor, but they're also one of the major miners here in Canada and worldwide. And 51% by Brookfield Asset Management. So this asset management has bought up a lot of nuclear with people's assets that people normally would have never invested the money into, right? And the nuclear industry is notorious for scooping asset management groups and then throwing the money away on nuclear, where eventually people will lose their life savings. And International Atomic Energy Agency review finds significant progress in Canada's nuclear regulatory framework. And of course, the International Atomic Energy Agency should never be allowed in any country, and they certainly are not an authority. And they're telling everybody as of last year, July the 13th, 2023, that nothing got out of those buildings. So the official story, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is just United Nations, which is the military-industrial complex, has said nothing got out of those buildings. So why the fuck should I trust them, or why would you trust them, or why should anybody else trust them? Really don't. But here they are, they're in Canada, they're considered God, they find significant progress, and who gives a fuck what they think? Who gives a shit what the International Atomic Energy Agency thinks? They don't have any sovereignty over Canada or any other country. We don't follow, they don't set our policies, they're a foreign entity. Why are we putting them on a pedestal, which is only meant to indoctrinate the Canadians that don't want any better, into thinking that they're somehow have redeeming qualities? How is that even possible? In Australia, Queensland could be the nuclear hub under the coalition's new energy plan. Like, for good, like we've covered Australia so much in the last number of years. First off, it's illegal to have a nuclear power plant in Australia. That's their legislation. That's legislated in. It's illegal. And the government down there and the politicians and the media are constantly promoting nuclear. Yet it's illegal. And in order, like, they don't have the infrastructure. Don't worry, the nuclear industry will come there and they'll rob the country of all their resources in order to pay for it. But they'll get what they need if they want it. They're really like a Black Death. Wherever they go, they just smother and destroy everything, don't they? Their whole history, their whole legacy is predicated upon that particular routine, isn't it? And so clearly that story is Fukushima using Reactor 6 fuel pool water pump. We covered it at the beginning. A misdirection after the recent death of Reactor 2. But it is interesting that they mentioned that the incinerators, radiation detecting equipment, also went down at the same time. It's quite an interesting thing. But that's clearly what they were doing. They were using that as a distraction. As far as I can tell, Reactor 6 must have melted down, right? Because the pictures I showed you at the very beginning, why would you redact the pictures of Reactor 6? And just hang on. We got a few minutes left. Let me look for something on Reactor 6. I got some headlines on Reactor 6, I'm pretty sure. And it's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, Reactor 5 and Reactor 6. Here we go. Where's Reactor 6? Reactor 5, Reactor 5, Reactor 5 and 6 were not in cold shutdown. How could you install cables at number 5 when Reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 detonated and you had lethal radiation everywhere? And not only that, there was 1,200 miles of telephone poles stripped off the coastline. How the hell did you get power back? These are massive 190-foot facilities. It's not like you're plugging in an extension cord. Cesium rises the highest in levels in months by Reactor 5 and 6. So there was a lot of things suggesting something happened. A lot of these, when you start adding them all up, this is an interesting one. TEPCO used radioactive water from Reactor 5 and 6. What do you mean radioactive water from 5 and 6? What are you talking about? To spray throughout Fukushima plant over 100 tons a day. Well, how do you replenish it, though? How can you take 100 tons a day out of when you don't have any way of replenishing it? How does that actually work, folks? And that's a really interesting question, isn't it? And here's another one from Reactor 5 and 6. Trouble at the Fukushima Reactor 5 and 6. Cracks are allowing in radioactive water that could destroy the energy generators and other vital equipment. What are you talking about? How are you getting... What do you mean allow in radioactive water? I got a picture I'll bring up in a second for you. And there was another headline of white smoke from the turbine buildings, was it? Yeah. And then the turbine buildings were redacted in the pictures that were released in 2021 that I showed at the very beginning of the show. I think I got one or two more headlines that I can might as well bring up while we're here. Reactor 6 had 6 feet of contaminated water in the turbine buildings. Contaminated, which means it's radioactive water. And water in the reactor building may cause cooling system to fail. Well, it had to fail. There was no power for 1,200 miles of the coastline, let alone Fukushima. What else have we got here, Bear? 1 minute. Reactor 5 and 6 now in crisis. Ceasing outside the release points at 1,000% in recent days. And locals say Hitachi engineers are coming to help. Well, like this is October, why aren't they there? See, none of that makes any sense. Unless you say they had a meltdown too. Then it actually makes sense. Alrighty. So was a worker confirmed dead after collapsing at the plant? Now I covered that 2 days ago exclusively, and then we covered it a bit last night, but with a whole lot of supporting documentation. Where if you can't get into the communities, how can it be safe at the nuclear plant, right? Which I was hoping was making good points. And then the poll tonight, of course, was asking a simple question. Was the spent fuel cooling systems at number 6 reactor that they're alleging there meant to cover up the death, the displaced death? And then the problem with number 6 reactor, which is this one here, you can see it's pixelated when you zoom in on it. When you zoom in on reactor 6, and I'm going to do it for you here, I'll jump in the screen for you, which is up there. This is reactor 5. That's the turbine pump house. Then it's reactor 6, and then it's the stack. Why is that pixelated out? If you got nothing to hide, why are you hiding it? Right, I hope that's a reasonable question. I don't know if it is, but we hope it is. Alright. Alrighty. Well, so I got a heat wave tomorrow. That's some picture, isn't it? That's just a picture James cooked up of the madness. There's the Great Lakes. Why are they contaminating the Great Lakes with the biggest aquifer, freshwater aquifer on the entire planet? Why is that saturated with nuclear dumps and nuclear power plants? Nuclear meltdowns, right? They had a nuclear meltdown at a couple of those places. One of them was the Fermi plant. It's a crazy industry, isn't it? We're going to come in and close down the poll. In a moment. There's some weak music in the background. Let's close down the poll here. Is Fukushima using Reactor 6 fuel pool water pump a misdirection after a recent death at Reactor 2? And in light of the video that I posted 2 days ago in particular, I would imagine that's exactly what they're up to. So thank you. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up on the video. Or a thumbs down, whatever is your cup of tea. Thanks, James, again for the donation. My goodness, I wish other people would donate. We're going to have a fundraiser this coming week, Sunday, Monday, because we got to pay for the website again this year for the 11th year or 12th year, right? And because we got to cover that, right? So I think Sunday we'll start a fundraiser, and if we don't raise enough, we'll do it again Monday. If we don't raise enough, we'll do it again Tuesday. Because we still got to have money to operate this operation. We got to fuel and expendables and everything else. Because we still, this is summer. We got to get the research in too, right? And so tomorrow night, baby, that's the plan. There's a lot of things can go wrong, but I'm going to try to make sure that's not one of them. I want water. I want to have the microscope here. I want to put drops on it. And I want to see how much life is left out there. And it better be a lot. I can tell you that much right now. The nuclear industry is going to hear an earful. Have a great night. Thanks for everybody. We'll see everybody on the show tomorrow night. You have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody right here at the next show. Take care, folks.